Okay, hey everyone. So thank you so much for taking part in this hackathon. I'm really excited to see what you guys build. And in order to help you with that, I figured I would write a quick presentation today about 3 awesome things that I think you can build on Arweave that no one else is looking at right now. So first of all, quick primer. What is the permaweb? Well, the permaweb is a decentralized permanent internet or web found on top of Arweave. It lets you build fully decentralized web applications. And by that, we don't mean the typical applications you see in crypto, which are, there's like a smart contract that enables some sort of financial engineering or some type of financial use case. And then there's a website on top, which is actually kind of centralized. We mean something quite different. We mean fully decentralized web applications from top to bottom, and web applications that are of the kind that you're sort of used to looking at. So, things like Reddit or Twitter, these types of things. Consumer-facing, data-focused applications. And so on Arweave, you can store your front end, and of course you can store user data, and it also acts like a database, and it also provides you smart contracts, as well as, of course, user identity, all in one complete stack, top to bottom. And so we think that this is really powerful, and people are building it to use incredible things. We would love for you to join them. So here's one such incredible thing that they're building. This is a system called Now, and if I move my face over here, you can see the top bar here. This is a web application that is fully stored on Arweave. It's being pulled back through a gateway, in this case arweave.dev, and it's being addressed using the Arweave name service, ARNS, which allows you to register a subdomain for that works across all gateways. So I could take this name Now, and I could put in g8way.io, which is another Arweave gateway, and that same web application would appear. But the application itself, this is of course a user interface we're looking at, that's stored on Arweave. It's accessing, hey, what are the pieces of content to show here on this sort of Reddit-like system, using GraphQL on top of Arweave gateways. So it's using the network like a database. And we can see the user identity here. This user uploaded this using their Arconnect wallet or Arweave.app. And so the identity comes as part of the system as well, and all of the rest of it too. So it's basically a fully decentralized version of Reddit running on top of Arweave. But there's also other systems like Alex. And again, this is a fully decentralized web application. In this case, there's a sort of slightly financial side to it, which is that you can contribute to pools, and those pools are for archiving different artifacts from the world. So there's a pool here about Are We Alone, about UFOs, and about COVID, and about space programs. And then when you contribute to these pools, people can run nodes and archive data into those pools and issue those assets proportionately to the people that contributed to the subsidization, so the paying for of the uploading of that data. But this is just two examples of the things you can do on the network. Another thing that the network enables in a sort of, you could say, first-class sense is atomic assets. So when you have a web like this, it is fully composable. That is, when you store a piece of data on Arweave, a piece of user data, it can be addressed by your application, but it can also be addressed by any other application, right? So we saw Now and Alex. There are 2 different web applications running on the permaweb. Well, artifacts uploaded through Alex, they can actually show up in Now, like by default. When they run those database queries in Now, all of the data from Alex is already there if they want to build on top of it. And this is super powerful because it allows you to have a web where user data, when you're a user, you can upload to the whole web at once and license your data, right? You can choose the license you want other people to be able to use it under. And then also as a developer, you're now building on a web that has, at the moment, 880, I guess, million pieces of data already in your application. You don't have the cold start problem, which is when you're a developer, you create a new app, you have no content to begin with. Well, here you have almost 1 billion pieces of content. And on top of that, in the Arweave network, your assets, your user data, they can become what we call atomic assets. So you can have tags on top of that data that say, hey, this is an upload through this application, and it has this metadata, like it has a title, it has a description, also has, of course, who uploaded it, as well as the data itself. So maybe that's an image, maybe it's a video or an audio file, as well as a contract embedded inside it. So that could be like an NFT contract that says, I uploaded the data, so I own the contract. Or it could be, a fractional contract that says, well, this we can see in other parts of the metadata, this data is licensed such that anyone can use the data, but when they use it, they have to share 1 cent, for example, of royalties with the owners of the token inside that piece of data, inside that atomic asset. And that means if I have 100% ownership, say, of the contract, the token inside that asset, I get every cent that is distributed to the token holders as a result of the royalties coming from that license. But maybe I can trade 50% of that with you. And now you buy that for, I don't know, a few bucks or a few $1,000, depending on how large the royalties are. And then you're getting that future royalty stream. And what that means is that now you have data that is portable between applications. So it moves around between applications, and it takes its licensing information, it takes its provenance information, who uploaded it, and it also takes, hey, who owns it? Where should the royalties go? All inside a single address. It's just, one, it looks like a transaction ID. Compare this to something like Ethereum, where, if you want to issue an NFT, you're storing the data on Arweave, and then there's a metadata file which also points to the data file, and then you have your NFT contract on Ethereum which points to the metadata file. You see, this is this sort of structure over here. It's very, very complicated. In Arweave, it's all in one place, and it's portable between applications because of that. We think this is super, super powerful. And we're right at the beginning of building the ecosystem of what I would call the composable web on the permaweb. So this is a great time to get involved and start trying stuff out. Okay, so you can see here that this is now again, and we've highlighted this time this buy and sell for this asset. So this asset, I think, was uploaded through a different application. It shows up in now, and also we know who owns it, and we can even take part in buying and selling it. But I'll come to that in a second. The user interface for that is very, very primitive right now. You can check it out if you go to now.arweave.dev. So, unfortunately you can't see because of my face, but there's a pretty wide ecosystem on top of Arweave now of people building incredible applications that are fully decentralized top to bottom of the stack. But there's room for so much more. So, without further ado, here are 3 ideas I think are pretty exciting for permaweb apps you can build on top of the Arweave stack. Forums with built-in truthiness markets and token rewards. Over the weekend, I saw that there was a pretty interesting post by Vixit here, and this got some traction on Hacker News. It's a very, very popular news site in the West for builders, and they were making the case for decentralized online forums. Now, Arweave has, funnily enough, actually had decentralized forums on top of it for a very long time, but I would say they're quite primitive. As you can see here, the last post was 4 years ago on some of these. They didn't do very much growth operations, and they didn't really work on the interface too much. But I think now, particularly with these atomic assets could be a great time to really build one of these that flourishes and is vibrant. And on top of it, you can also use things like permafax. So permafax is a market contract that you can either embed inside any atomic asset you're uploading to the network, or you can attach to another piece of data on the network. And it basically asks a simple question. To what extent does the crowd believe that this piece of data is true and relevant? And you can imagine in the forums, and they can very simply buy the token true and buy the token false. And when they do so, the price increases. And when they sell those tokens, the price decreases. And so on every post, you can see the crowd going backwards and forwards on how true or false they believe that a piece of information is. And this is it's a simple economic protocol built on top of the permaweb, and so it's available for use in all data that's uploaded to the permaweb in this sort of composable way. You can imagine in a forum context, this could be a great way for people to highlight interesting information that's being passed around. Is it true or false? You could also use the stamps protocol, which is kind of like a universal like button for the permaweb. And that has this interesting system where you earn stamp tokens. So when vouched users, vouching is like the blue tick for the permaweb, essentially. You vouch in one place, and you have a vouch, like this kind of blue tick here on Twitter, across every application. Any application can use that because the vouching data is stored on Arweave, and so it's permissionlessly available for all people to build on. Okay. So Stamps uses this vouching system to say, okay, let's distribute rewards proportionately to what people are stamping, what they're liking on the permaweb, as long as those users are not bots, and we'll use vouch to work that out. But that means in your forum, you can imagine, you can just put a button anywhere on the permaweb now that says stamp this. And if the user is verified, then they're giving token rewards to the person that created that content immediately. That's kind of cool. Like, imagine that on a forum. This person gave an interesting comment. That's great. Just stamp it, and there you go. They get some rewards. And also, that user gets to make like a trail of, here's all the cool stuff I saw on the permaweb. And you can build on that data set too. You could even build a user interface. I mean, this isn't one of the ideas I gave, but it's definitely possible. You could build a user interface that shows like a log of all the cool things people have found on the permaweb by looking at what they've stamped. Because again, all of that data is open and composable. You can maybe getting the feeling that, every time a new protocol, data protocol, is added to the system, the opportunities combinatorially explode. So every new protocol, creates exponentially more opportunities, which I think is a really cool part of the system, and means that, we're right at the beginning now. We're just starting this journey, but as it expands over time, there'll be so many amazing things to build. And all the things you build in this hackathon, other people can build on in the future, and so on. Okay, so another great application that you could build on top of the permaweb is a decentralized academic publishing platform. So you can't see because unfortunately my face, but here's an interesting paper outlining what's essentially called the reproducibility crisis. This is a realization that we've had in the scientific community over the last approximately decade, that a lot of the research that is published cannot actually be reproduced. And that's a polite way of saying isn't correct. It's a very serious problem. People tend to believe that if it's published in an academic journal paper, it must be correct, but in fact it turns out in a lot of cases that is not true. And this, I think, is a result of the peer review publishing system that basically says, okay, when you want to publish a paper, a group of your peers, in some sense, other people that have published papers in journals about that subject, should review your paper and say whether it's suitable for publication or not. Now, the problem with this system is that they're not actually required to reproduce your results. So imagine that you have a biomedical paper. They don't have to go out and perform your experiment again and say, yes, I can verify this. I validated it. I came to the same results doing the same set of things. They don't have to do that. And so what you end up getting is actually these sort of loops that reinforce cognitive biases. So if the professor thinks that the outcome of the trial in question was likely to be true, then they're likely to say, yes, this is suitable for publication, regardless of whether it was actually true. It's kind of like an echo chamber. And this really makes no sense because we have an academic publishing situation in which a lot of papers are not published, which actually are true, and a lot of papers that are published aren't true. I think I may have said that the wrong way around, but you get my point. This, I think, calls for a wider publishing, would you say, scope. And that is already taking place using a system called ARXIV at the moment, the archive. But it's centrally operated, and when you upload your data to it, you have to hope that ARXIV is going to replicate it for you for a long period of time and they don't lose the data. And that you have to trust that they're not filtering things. And so actually a far better system would be one built on Arweave, and you upload your paper and you contribute it to the public commons of the data set, and it's published backed by the Arweave endowment, so you get extremely long-term storage of that data, and then anyone can access it. And you can imagine building inside a decentralized academic publishing system an open peer review, so you can just see the sort of pros arguments and cons arguments, like comments from other reviewers in public, and maybe even the publisher's responses to those comments. Because after all, shouldn't we be letting people make up their own mind about what they think is true or false? Like, how else is it going to work? Are we going to have committees that tell us what is true or false? That's essentially the current system, and it doesn't work. Like, we now have data that shows that it doesn't work at all. We can build something better. And then on top of that, you can imagine, you could have stamps. So if people like the article, they could stamp it. That means that the publisher, the person uploading the data, they get access to those stamp rewards. Or you can have truthiness and falsehoods contracts on top of that piece of data. All of this is possible on top of the Perm Web because of the open composability of the data set. So I think this is really exciting and could lead to a better version of science. Okay, finally, a full stack decentralized atomic asset trading app. So this is something that, interestingly, in this ecosystem doesn't actually exist yet. You can go to now and you can see that there's a very primitive trading interface that lets you say, I want to buy or sell X% of this asset. Well, that's not that, what's underneath that is contracts that allow a fully on-chain order book, right? Wouldn't it be great if people could go to an application that looks closer to something like a cross between Uniswap or Binance, perhaps even, and OpenSea, right? Because they're atomic assets, so it's going to look kind of closer to OpenSea in the sense that there's many different assets. It's not just a small number. But then you have full access to the trading capabilities of those contracts underneath that let you swap the assets around and trade the prices. And this will allow you to just imagine that someone else in this cohort built this decentralized academic publishing platform. Well, when people stamp those, they will create rewards for the people that had uploaded those papers. Well, now as the author of those papers, you could take the atomic asset that is that paper to this new trading post and say, okay, I want to trade 20% of the future royalties from my paper with someone that wants to buy it. You have an open sort of decentralized content revenue trading system. I think it could be really, really exciting, a new version of the web, really. Anyway, so thank you so much for listening. I wish you all the best on the hackathon. And can't wait to see what you build. Thank you.